Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shang, and I am the host of this podcast. The goal of my show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Now, today's episode's guest is Gary Fowler. Gary is an award-winning senior level executive with 30 plus years of success in global strategic innovation leadership, sales, marketing, operation, and investment management. He is currently the CEO and co-founder of the award-winning growth stage AI venture studio called GSD Venture Studios. Moreover, Gary is a recognized expert in entrepreneurship, including entrepreneurial education, lean startup methods, innovation management, and technology development. Gary, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thank you. It's a beautiful day out here in San Diego, and I see you're in Florida, so we're in similar climate, which is great. So aside from what I've read so far about your background, could you share with us, my listeners, a bit more about how you got started in this venture capitalist arena?
Yeah, sure. So, I've done 17 companies and I've been involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team of ClickSoftware, which was sold to SalesForce for $1.35 billion, and also Yva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. My belief is that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. As you said, I'm the CEO, president, and co-founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios. We are a premier AI and quantum venture studio working with companies across multiple vertical market using AI and quantum as a horizontal. We've got a lot of challenges on in front of us today. We've got global warming, population increases. They'll go from 8.1 billion to 13 billion by the end of the century. I don't know if you know, but we've got to double the food supply by 2050 to feed everybody. And we can't increase the number of livestock because 26% of the pollution today is caused by livestock. We got to look at things like plant-based protein. And, when I got started in this environment, I was 21 years old. I did my first company. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania on the side of a mountain. I had less than 500 people in my village. So when I say farm, I mean, I had to ride my bike 5 miles, 7 miles. We didn't have enough money to buy a gauge to talk about the mileage on the bike. So I would just ride my bike to my friend's house. My nearest friend's house was that far away. So I got up and learned that you got to be persistent, because when it's cold in Pennsylvania and it's snowing, it's not so fun. I know you came from Minnesota, so you know what it's like. It's not so fun trying to ride a bike. It's pretty darn slippery. But we got to do what you got to do. And entrepreneurship's like that, isn't it? Because we must believe in our dreams. In fact, I did a TED Talk a few years ago called Unleashing the Human Potential. Each one of us have to look ourselves in the mirror and believe that we can do it. We need to understand that if we don't focus on exactly where we want to go in life, it's not going to happen. In fact, in psychology, it's called the Pygmalion effect, the self-fulfilling prophecy. You and we, books like The Secret and As a Man Thinketh call it willing it into existence or manifestation. But it's true, because what happens, all of a sudden, everything starts to line up. That's the soft side of entrepreneurship. And I learned it at an early age. I'll tell you a direct example. I was taking martial arts classes, and my martial arts instructor, Ho Wai Kwan, who was a grand master, a 9th degree black belt in Taekwondo and Aikido. He barely speak English at the time. I'll never forget it. And I was coming up for my black belt test, and he said to me, he gave me a cinder block cap, and he told me to hold it. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, that's great. For what? Because he said, you're going to break it. Now, holding a cinder block cap and breaking a cinder block cap is really, really hard. Putting it on the ground is not so hard, but when you're trying to hit it with your fist, it's hard. Why? Because your body moves. You have to keep it perfectly still, and you've got to hit it really hard and fast, or you're going to break your knuckles, like literally break your knuckles. And I looked at, Master Quan, and I said to him, what do you want me to do? And he says, strong mind, other side. And I understood what he meant. He meant, you've got to really focus to go through it. And I never forget. So I held it up. There was nobody else in his facility, the dojo, but me, because I was taking this task separately from everybody else. I couldn't do it because of travel. So, I was scared to death, but I did it. And he said, strong mind. And he said, life, you need to look at the other side. Imagine where you want to be. And I'll never forget that. And then another thing that he did to me is he told me I had to go in the river. This is in November in Pennsylvania. And I don't know about Minnesota, but November in the river in Pennsylvania is not warm. It is really cold. It can be ice starting then. So he told me that I had to go in the river, and he had to hit me. He wanted to punch and kick me because he wanted to make sure that I could not let the physicalness of being in cold and shivering affect me, to be able to defend against punches and kicks. And I did it. And I'll never forget coming out of that. My whole attitude towards life changed. It's about, you can do what you want if you believe. Look at the most successful people in the world. They will it into existence. They believe they can do it. They don't say, I hope, or maybe, or I might be able to do it. They say, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get stuff done. That's how it really works. And so throughout your life, and I'm sure you're the same way, if you focus on it, you can make it come true. Of course, you have to have a lot of people believe in you. You have to raise money as a startup, et cetera, but it starts to come together if you believe.
That is so incredible. And thank you so much for those words of wisdom and self-belief. And as the man thinks he is, a book that I've been meaning to read more. It's just incredible that we have the power to change our lives and the lives of others and the communities that we're part of. And I'm so grateful to have your time here because, you've worked with so many business owners and entrepreneurs to get their mindset in a right space and really empower people to really live out their truest calling, which is what this show is about. So my question here is, of course, the show is about purpose and meaning. How do you define purpose in your own life, and how does that show up in your own life?
Well, purpose for me is do the right thing. So whatever you believe is right, true and just, treat people the way you want to be treated, because you never know in your life. Life is like a ton of bricks. You never know what's going to happen. And sometimes it hits you. So the same people that I've met years ago are now billionaires, right? And if I didn't nurture that relationship with them, I wouldn't have it, because they're really hard to get a hold of. And I wouldn't be because they're a billionaire. It's just because they're a friend. So remember, you're always going to meet the same people going up as you are coming down. So treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't go down through just because you have more money or a bigger company or international recognition. That's not a reason to treat somebody poorly. Treat them the way you want to be treated. Do the right thing. Be fair and just. If you cheat somebody on something, it's going to come back to haunt you. Eventually, nothing good's going to happen. So,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's, and spreading that positive energy is important. People want to be around people that have positive energy. They don't want to be around people that are negative. They want to be around that energy. They feel it.
Yeah, and you hit on my next point is that, I think at the end of the day, we strip our job titles, the amount of money in our bank account, we're in everything else that's secondary. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and we are connected through our shared humanity. And another thing too that you mentioned was about energy, and I profoundly believe in that. Energy is what either separates us or gets us closer to one another. And I've been more mindful every morning when I wake up, is to set the right intentions and ask myself, how do I want to show up in this world? And a lot of it has to do with, am I in a positive state of mind? Do I have the capacity to shine my light into this world today, and be the best that I can be, my best version? What are some of the success habits that you have and that you see successful entrepreneurs have, in incorporating into their own lives as well as yours?
Well, the first thing is, you've got to go down through, people blame other people for things and they shouldn't do it. They got to look themselves in the mirror. You put yourself in that situation. You are the one that controls your destiny. The problem is people, sometimes people blame other people for their problems, but in reality, you own that. You're the master of your destiny. You've got to control it. You've got to accept it, and you've got to make the changes, right? Whatever they are. You don't have enough money, you got to go out. Okay, what do I need to do to make it? Right?
Mhm.
Sometimes, whether you need to get 2 jobs where you do your startup, and listen, doing a startup's not easy. It's up and down and in and out. It's like riding a snake. It's up and down. A friend of mine one time told me, he said, I had a very profound friend, another billionaire, and we were out to lunch and I said, Bob, I'm not sure what to do. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not sure about whether or not I should do this. And he said, listen, Gary, here, I'm going to give you something. And he took 2 dice, dice, right? For like at the casinos. And he put them in my hand. And he said, now I want you to hold these, Gary. I said, okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. What's the chance of success if you never roll those dice? And I said, well, 0. He said, then what's the answer to the question? I said, well, roll the dice, roll them. I came out with a 7. He said, it doesn't always happen that way, but you got to try again, and you got to pivot, and you got to try it. If you make a mistake and you go down the wrong road, you go down through a road and you're going to I-5 or I-4, and as you're going down there and you make a mistake, what do? And you make a U-turn, right? You'll come off, come back, make a U-turn. Well, guess what? That's what life's all about. You can't always make the right decision, but you can course correct. That's where the beauty is. And each one of us have to understand it. It's not about saying, oh, what do? I went off the wrong road. And how do I get back on? Figure it out.
Right.
When
Yeah.
you talk to the most successful people in the world, they don't complain a lot. The ones that I know do not complain. In fact, I'll never forget this. This is another story. So I was with the right-hand man of Rupert Murdoch. And I said, here's a guy that's one of the most successful persons in the world. I said, well, he's been through divorces. He married this lady, Chinese lady, and got a divorce and had, other marriages, etc. How does a guy like Rupert Murdoch approach life? And he said, because he's got amnesia. And I said, what do you mean? He said, he never talks about the past. Never. And the most successful people I know, none of them do.
Mm.
None.
That shows that the kind of mindset that they're in, that they're futuristic and that they're looking for future opportunities. It's all about growth for them. I think as humans, in order for us to achieve a state of happiness, fulfillment, and purpose, we have to look into our future, and of course be present about the current situation, but also look forward to the future and the opportunities that we can create for ourselves and for others. Going back to my notion about purpose. So I grew up in a household where my parents didn't have very much. My parents are political refugees of the Vietnam War. They're, my people were called Hmong, Hmong. We live in the highlands of Laos. Laos is a country in Southeast Asia bordering Cambodia and Vietnam. And when the Vietnam War broke out in the 1970s, my parents had to flee. And, they they had to start a whole new life in the US. And I was born in Wisconsin. And having to see the challenges that my parents went through was, um, it was disheartening because one, they didn't speak a word of English when they came here. Two, um, my dad had to work 80 plus hours a week to support the family because he didn't have any sort of educational degree. And my mom had to take care of us kids while my dad was busy working, and they didn't have time to themselves at all. So how my parents were able to fight through all of that and still remain being together and still in love, I don't know. But it
But
was
they
tough.
did it. They're right. They did it. And
Exactly.
that's it. And, a lot of times people, you wonder how in the world people can have such good jobs and good money and get divorced and everything else because they got too much time on their hands. You know what I mean? And they always look at about the differences rather than the similarities.
Mhm.
There was never a question with your parents of whether or not you're going to stay together or get divorced, because the thing is, that's just the way it is. You got to work hard. My grandfather came from Greece. He couldn't speak a lick of English either. He came over on a boat. My grandmother came from Egypt, and she was sent out of Egypt. There were Greeks that were there, and when there was a revolution that took place, they kicked them out, and she had no place to go. So she moved to the U.S. at 13 years old.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
and that is so incredible. And the stories that we hear all the time, how people have, they came from hardships and have made it successfully. And I think part of it is that, some of these folks who haven't made it, they have too much time in their hands, and they tend to take life for granted. And where I come from, my parents taught me, of course, to be a good human being, but also the values that I need to have in order to be successful and be happy. And throughout my career and even my entire life, looking back, I've always been around folks that were much wiser than me, more mature than me. Maybe you might consider me as an old soul, but for the most part, I've always looked up to these folks who I consider as I don't know if they're considered guided angels or mentors or whatnot. I think it's very inspiring to be around these folks who can really share, words of wisdom and life experiences, so that I could advance my own life rather than having to make the mistakes that my peers are doing in order to grow and to mature and to be wiser. Because at the end of the day, life is short, and our time here is finite, and we have to wake up every morning, get excited, go after our dreams, and fulfill our destiny. Because otherwise, what's the purpose of our existence here on earth?
Exactly. And so, you got to wake up. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. It could be the last day. Live your life, enjoy yourself, be happy. Treat every day as the last day, and see what would you do differently? How would you treat people differently? Have some compassion, Some
Mhm.
people need your help. When it's all said and done, what mark did you leave on this planet if you can't help people?
Mhm.
I went over to Russia, by the way, back in 1992. And I was scared to death to go to Russia at the time. Just scared. I'd never been around. The Cold War is over. Went over there. I met some of the nicest people in the world. And then in 2001, I ended up moving over there and spent over 14 years in Russia. Yes, I did tech companies. Yes, I built companies there. But I found from the nicest, compassionate people I've ever met in my life. And the situation is I went to Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, all through Central Asia, all over Europe. But there's a lot of really nice people out there. But the other thing is they do react to kindness. If they know that you're a good person, you're trying to do good things, they're much more apt to help you. It's not all about business when it's said and done. Who cares about the money? When you're dead, it doesn't matter really, does it? Yes, you leave some for your family. Yes, you leave some for your wife or your husband. But when what's all said and done is there are people going to remember you. I remember one thing Reeves said. I'll never, ever forget that. He said, what they said, how do you know that somebody loves you? And he looked and he went like this and he said, because his mother died and his girlfriend died, all this. He said, because they'll miss you when you're gone.
Mhm. Wow.
And it was such a profound statement. And that's what it's all about, right? They'll miss you when you're gone, just like my mother and father who passed. You miss them. And the situation is, but at the same time, you can't live in that situation where, you're tied into the past. You got to live for the future because there's other things to do, right? Life goes on. So you got to look to the future. And at the same time, we got a lot of challenges in front of us, right? We've got this global warming. We've got population increase, I said, by 8.1 billion to 13 billion by the end of the century. Food supplies, global warming. The average temperatures around the world could be up 7 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of this century. What does it mean? It means that Florida is going to be underwater for the most part. Seriously.
Mhm.
So what kind of legacy do we leave for our kids? We've got to figure out ways, it's, as Elon Musk said, it's not if we're going to run out of fossil fuels, it's when. So what happens in Minnesota when there's no more oil and gas to heat the houses? What do they do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I want to step back a little and cover about business impact. We kind of discussed about it prior to the recording here, and you mentioned about how you're able to get businesses to think about how we could be more environmentally friendly. And so, what's been your conversations like with entrepreneurs and business owners in terms of getting them to be more socially involved in these issues like climate change?
Well, so it starts right at the top with the highest net worth individuals. And they're starting to come around because they know if we don't do something in 250, 300 years, we're going to go extinct.
Mhm.
In my opinion, when you look at the models, it's just not going to happen. We can't have the temperatures raise another 30 degrees. Can you imagine what it's going to be like living on the planet? Like nothing good, right?
Right.
So what we got to do is we've got to go down through and we've got to create that abundance. We got to create that destiny. And at the same time, those high net worth individuals, those companies now understand that if they don't do something, it's not before where we question whether global warming, for instance, is taking place. It's like, what can we do to fix it? If we look at Africa, there are 38 countries in Africa, and the population is approximately 1.2 billion. There's most of the population's under 30. How in the world can we bring people from Africa into our lives to help them to be able to, and I don't mean in an entitlement way, but create companies that can do something like artificial intelligence or quantum, can make a dent. We need everybody to bind together, whether they're in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, it doesn't matter. Where can we find those minds that want to make a dent? Listen, it's not easy. Life is not easy. And if it was, it would be a whole different story, but it's not. But at the same time, you got to look at the positive fruits of life. What are the positive parts of life that really excite you? What are the things you want to do? Not about, oh, I don't know. You could always say from the day you're born, you're going to die. That's a true statement, right? But, can you imagine if you lived your life like that?
Yeah, I tell you, it's we have to look at the bright side. We are what we think about, right? So if we focus on negative, our lives will be filled with the negative things in our lives. And again, it goes back to your earlier point about energy. We are energy. Everything we focus on will receive. What's your how do you overcome challenging times? I'm sure as an entrepreneur yourself, business leader, things in your life have happened. How do you overcome those challenges? Like what makes you feel excited even though you're dealing with these challenges?
Well, I mean, amnesia is the first thing. I don't really think about it. To be honest with you, I let it go.
Mhm.
Some people dwell on it. I don't. I just think about, okay, what can I do to fix it? I don't look at the problem. I'll never forget, I met this guy, Patch Adams. Patch Adams, they did a movie about him in 1999 with Robin Williams many years ago. And I met Patch. It was serendipity because I had just watched the movie. I was going through a painful divorce at the time. I watched the movie. What happens the next day? I'm at a McDonald's in Boca Raton, Florida. My friend calls me up and I was so excited. I watched that movie over and over and over again. My friend calls me up and said, listen, I wanted to let you know, my friend Sean called up and he said, Patch Adams is going to be going to Russia and he's looking for somebody over there. And would you mind joining him? Would you mind meeting with him? And I said, no, I'd love to meet with him. Now, I had just seen the movie the night before. I had just gone through a painful divorce. Now, what kind of serendipity is that? And he's the guy that said laughter is the best medicine, and et cetera. But he said one thing to me directly, and also in the movie, Robin Williams did it. He said, look at me. And then he put up 4 fingers and he said, look. And he said, not at the fingers, look at me. And he said, how many fingers do you have? Well, when you look at somebody and look at fingers, it becomes 8 and not 4. He said, look at the solution and not the problem. I'll never forget that. And that thing struck me. Now imagine going down through a divorce situation, all that. All of a sudden, I picked myself back up. I became a professor at one of the top business schools in Russia. I ended up doing my startup, the Startup Academy. My whole life changed. All of a sudden, the world started pivoting around and it started to change in a positive direction. I always wanted to produce a concert. I found the best musicians. I had over 3,000 people come to my concert. It's just everything changed. But what happened is it's not about the problem. Too many people focus on that. Think about how to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, in order to be a part of community that that helps us be our best self, we have to be not the ones that create the problems, but the solution, the folks with the solutions, right? Because that's how we're going to contribute to society, to communities that we're part of. What inspires you to do the work you're doing today?
I'm happy. I mean, I am just happy. I'm really, really happy. I love my wife. I love my friends, my partner, who you spoke to, Derek. I mean, we have a really good family harmonized environment. I'm doing the things I want to do. I put myself into situations to do what I want to do. I love technology. I love writing. I love speaking. I love operations and creating the companies. I just love it. People say, well, why would you work? Because I like what I'm doing. I don't know. Why do people go swimming in the ocean? Why do people take trips to Maldives? Why do people, go alpine skiing? Because I just love what I'm doing. I get to do everything that I want to do. And at the same time, and have some fun. I ride my bikes, go bike riding and travel and those kind of things. Sure. But to help and make a dent in the universe, to inspire young minds, to bring democracy and of opportunities so everybody can participate is really important. Because you're right, when you're in places like Laos or Vietnam, wherever you are, and listen, there's blocks, but if they have a conduit to somebody like my company and ourselves, it changes everything, because now it's not you're a little company in Laos or Cambodia, you're now an international company that's going global, right? And it's I'll never forget. Here's another story too. I own a construction company and I built 27 houses. And I'll never forget, this woman walks into one of my houses and the front left room was a living room, I called it. Now it's the same exact size as the back room, which I called the family room. Exact. There was no difference. Nothing was different. Both of them had fireplaces. Both were exactly the same size. By the way, the windows were the same. There was one additional window in the back, but pretty much exactly the same. Exact. Same hardwood floors, same throw carpet, little. Anyhow, she comes in and she said, can I see the plans for the house? And I said, sure. And she said, oh, I see the living room's in the front. I'm looking for the living room in the back. I'm a little different. And I was joking around. I said, oh, I got it upside down. I got it the wrong way. It is in the back. And I just flipped it. I was joking. She said, I love it. I just love it. Nothing changed. You know what I mean? Nothing changed. And I was kidding. But when I looked at it, it is the same. What's the difference? It is the same exact dimension. They're the same dimensions, the same leaded glass doors in the middle. It's the same. But sometimes people get so set, they don't think, open your mind a little bit and look at things a little differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we were kids, we were living in a world of imagination, and there was so much creativity. As we grow older, we have these limitations that are being placed into our heads, and it's
who places the limitations?
What's
Who
that?
puts them in there?
It's
Who,
our parents, our siblings, the
places
people
them?
who,
You place them. It has nothing to do with your parents or your sibling.
yeah.
It doesn't. You own the responsibility. You put them in,
Mhm.
right? Nobody else. And the other thing is that, children are very creative because they're free thinking. Well, guess what? If you start to think like a child and do things and explore life, you don't get old and you don't die as fast. It's proven. You understand? You don't. You change molecularly, you change because you think differently. You run more, you do more exercise, you do things, you enjoy your life more, you have less stress. But what happens is we get older, what happens is people contract inside of themselves and they never let themselves to be able to smell the flower, the beauty of a flower, look at hummingbirds in the air or by the flowers, do things, have fun, try something, test yourself. Do something tomorrow you wouldn't normally do. Think of something you wouldn't know. Bowling. I haven't been bowling in 20 years. I wouldn't mind going bowling just to say, listen, I did it again. I want to do that, explore, try things. And if you do that, it's like sharpening a knife. When you sharpen a knife, if you don't test yourself and try it, it goes dull and it's harder to get it sharp. So what you got to do is always test yourself and do things. Read books, watch movies, look at YouTube and learn, take a course at MIT, take a course at Harvard, go swimming, go scuba diving, learn how to sail a ship, learn how to fly a plane, do something, try it, have fun.
And, all of those activities that you mentioned, you know what that's part of life. That's what it is. We have to live life. And in that process, leverage our creativity. I'm so happy that you're at a place in your life where you're happy and you get to do the things that you love to do, not being pressured to do it because someone tells you that.
Yeah, I mean,
What
simple pleasures
advice?
too. Sometimes simple pleasures, simple, tiny pleasures. It's not that sometimes the thing it costs the most, and sometimes in the US, and we think about, oh, I need to have a Hermes pocketbook or Louis Vuitton or whatever. Maybe yes, but maybe it's some simple stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
Something simple, you know what I mean? I bought myself a flashlight for $29.95 a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about that flashlight for a long time. It's a solar flashlight. I just thought, just like a kid, I loved flashlights when I was a kid, and I put it in my bag where I have e-bikes. I put it in my bag so that if I get stranded at nighttime and I have to do a repair, I have it. I was so happy with that little $29.95 flashlight. It made my week. It still makes me happy. In fact, I got it right over here. I got it sitting right here because I'm just looking at it, admiring it. But those simple things in your life, little tiny things that make you happy are important. It's not about, you need to buy a Ferrari or Corvette. I'm not saying don't do it, but that shouldn't be the driving force. It's not only the material things, it's the other existential things that are out there that make us happy. Walking down the street, looking at the birds. Sometimes I got to tell you, I watch people. How many times do people look up at the sky to look at the birds? Really? They don't do it. And the older you get, the less you do it. It's crazy.
It's the simple things in life that I think that matter most. The things that money can't buy, the things that give us meaning, joy, and purpose. Those are the things that we should live for, and that we should look for as well every day. That gives us a sense of fulfillment. I mean, even the people with a lot of wealth aren't the happiest. I mean, I know a lot of friends who think that money will buy happiness, and it's a cliche to say it, but it doesn't. And the moment we can realize that, the sooner we can realize that, I think the better that we're off in terms of achieving our fullest potential here on Earth. I know we're about that time, Gary. What last advice would you give my listeners listening to the show on life, on purpose, on entrepreneurship, anything?
Yeah, I mean, you got to just go do it. Don't sit on your hands. Go out and try it. A friend of mine many years ago, Scott McNeely, who I had lunch with right before the pandemic, said to me, always go to areas that you fear the most because you're going to learn the most. And, I listened to what he said. So whenever I'm in a situation that I fear something, whatever it is, I go out and I want to understand it, master it, and move forward. So Don't sit on your hands. As you get older, yes, people do start to become more conservative and don't want to try things, but that's not the way it has to be. Learn, read a book, go out and question things, take dancing classes, take scuba dive, do whatever you want to do, have some fun. And, there was a song many years ago, a few years ago, when Obama was elected called Aaron's Simple Pleasures. But that's really what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Love. How much is, if somebody gives you a nice hug, how much is it worth? It's worth everything that you could possibly imagine. Those physical connection, a hug and a kiss and kindness, right? Some of you walking down the street, you know how good you feel. I don't know about you, but if I see somebody there that needs a help or I can help them, give them $20 or $50 or whatever it is to try to help them get something to eat. That's what it's all about, helping each other. It's not about stopping wars, Mother Teresa said, it's about pro peace. Let's go out. Everybody out there, just everybody, go out one day and show a random act of kindness to somebody. Watch what happens. The whole world will start changing. We're so screwed up right now with all these war situations and posturing and everything else. We need to go down through and help each other. Listen, when it's all said and done, what do people care about? They care about feeding their families. They care about their kids. They care about their wife. They care about living a reasonable life, quality of life, all of us. So let's go out and figure out how we, not in an entitlement way, but how we can create opportunities. We do it by creating jobs in countries for people to be able to work, because if they can feed their family, they're less likely to join a terrorist group. They're less likely to do nefarious things. Create opportunities that are out there. Let's solve these problems around the world, and let's do it now. As we say at GSD, let's get shit done. Tomorrow never comes.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Gary. I think your words of wisdom and advice will really help my listeners really find their own path, their own journey, and hopefully reach a destiny where they could be happy and content and fulfilled. Where can people connect with you should they want to?
Sure, they can check me out on LinkedIn or Facebook. I have shows, the Founders Report with Gary Fowler, Gary's Picks, GST Presents Silicon Valley in Tech. I have incredible guests. I've had 4-star admirals, actresses from Hollywood. Just had somebody that's had been chief of staff at the NAACP an hour ago or so. Just incredible people. But all of them say the same thing, right? It's about being happy. It's about moving forward. And it's not being afraid, about not being afraid.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, folks, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to connect with Gary, you know where to find him. And please do reference the show, the Purpose Tuned podcast. Until then, we'll see each other again. Thank you so much, folks.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
See ya.